Hello, everyone. Welcome to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And on today's show, I have Dai Manuel. So let me talk about the podcast first. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is a topical conversation based on topics that we want to talk about daily. Whether you're 18 to 80, you have stories to share. And the gist of this podcast is just a conversation, no judgment. So let me tell you a little bit about Dai. His passion is to engage and challenge people in living healthy, more active lifestyle. With increasing obesity rates and lack of focus and education on preventive medicine, our country, which is all over the world, is facing a health epidemic, which is very true, especially here in the United States. The solution starts with parents modeling a healthy, active lifestyle for their children to follow. Dai, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How are you, sir?
William, thank you, man. I'm absolutely stoked to be here. And hey, you know, I love the topics that you talk about. I know we were talking before we hit record, like, dude, this is the conversations that matter, but unfortunately, they're not the most comfortable conversations at times. So I know we shy away from them. I know I'm 45 years old, and trust me, I've shied away from these conversations most of my life, but
I'm with you on that.
No more.
I am with you on that. And today's topic is why vulnerability is a human thing. So before we get into that, Dai, how did you get into this space? What was it in the marketplace you saw that, you know, we needed Dai Manuel? Why?
Well, you know, like most entrepreneurs, I sort of fell into it. And you know what I mean by that is like a lot of times we end up in entrepreneurship or in certain lines of work where we gain fulfillment, but it's not like we were born and we said, you know, the first time we were asked, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? That we said, well, I want to be a coach. I want to mentor people. Like, no, I wasn't saying that when I was a teen. And to be fair, you know, I came from the opposite end of the spectrum of health. You know, I was morbidly obese as a teenager. And,
really?
You know, yeah, man, I was a big kid. Hey, when I send you a copy of my book, you'll see there's a photo of me in there. It's the big version of me at 14 years old. And
wow.
But it didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of 5 years. And that's my first introduction to compounding. And, you know, like, I mean, what is it? Einstein's famous quote, right? With the two most powerful forces in the universe, love and compound interest, right?
Yes.
so I've learned the negative effects of compounding, and most people that struggle with their health also have experience with this, but most of the time, because it's happening so gradually, we're not aware of it. Long and short, after working about 21 months of just working on me, you know, changing how I eat, changing how I move, changing how I think, and just taking action in my own life, like being really accountable to myself and some of the things that I wanted to experience health-wise. And I transformed my lifestyle, but it took almost 2 years to do it. Like, it wasn't a short time, but remember, it took me 5 years to get that state of unhealth. Right. It took me 2 years to undo it. So for anybody wanting to make changes, recognize when you make a change, it often takes less to make the change back to what you want to be than what it took you to get there. So take it from me, you'll probably experience that. But after I experienced that, I was like, friends of my parents, and this is the craziest thing. I had friends of my parents, like, you gotta realize my mom, my dad, they were in their 40s at this point when I was that age, and their friends would come over to the house. They'd observe this change that I went through, and all of a sudden they started coming around the house to talk to me, not to my parents. They were coming over to literally sit me down and ask me questions about how I could help them get healthier. Wow. And I was like, I'm 17. I'm like, are you sure you're here to talk to me? You're looking at me? You're looking at me? You know, like, I'm like, there's no way, because I didn't feel I had any value to offer. Right. And that was the first time in my life where I experienced this awareness that I have something that I can do, and I can do it well, and I can help other people with it. And so I got bit by the bug back then. And, you know, in my entire adult life, in some capacity or another, I've been supporting people with change.
Right.
And that's it, man. And like, so I didn't really come to it naturally, but when I did stumble into it, it was like an epiphany. I was just like, boom, I want to do this the rest of my life. And so that's what I do, you know?
That's amazing. That's, you know, because think about it, Dai, you were able to change, right? And it's like being, and you, like I said, you were self-aware of some of the things you were doing, some, you know, your health and all that. And you're 14 years old, right? When you, and I mean, that's incredible, because at 14, you know, you're happy-go-lucky, you want to hang out with your friends and all that. Did somebody did somebody body shame you?
Mental health issues.
I gotcha. Did somebody body shame you and say, hey man, Dai, what's up? You can't hang out with us. You're kind of overweight, being, you know, nice about the term, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And as I always say, you know, kids can be mean.
Yeah.
But teenagers are cruel.
Mm,
And, to date myself, as I said, I'm 45, almost 46 now. And, I still tell my kids about some of these changes and what I did back then. Like I went to the library to get books out, like how to learn this stuff. And they're like,
right.
Dad, why don't you just Google? I'm like, I'm older than Google, guys. Like, but to my benefit, I'm glad that there wasn't any social media around when I was a teenager,
Yeah.
because I see what kids are facing today.
Oh, I
And the
see it too.
level
Yeah.
of public shaming is horrendous.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is the evil side of social. And it's easy for people to do it because they're hiding behind
Yeah.
a profile, behind a fake wall. And, most of the time I like to believe that people wouldn't be this way to face with people. Most of the time they're not, but for me, that was it, as a teenager and being in that state of unhealth, like, yeah, there was the snickering, the pointing of fingers, the bullying. I mean, all the typical cliches,
Mm,
or stigmas associated with someone being of that state of unhealth. Like that was my life, man. That's what I was living. And there was a lot of mental health challenges that came along with that,
right.
and hey, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I still deal with some mental health challenges. And I mean, will it ever go away entirely? Probably not. But my natural resiliency and my ability to bounce back on the down days is
Yeah.
phenomenal comparatively to what it was. And that's what I want people to understand. Like some changes doesn't mean that we eradicate the problem,
Sure.
but it just means that we build our ability to bounce back from problems and do it in a much healthier way where we feel more confident and clear and on point with our own lives. So
Right.
that is where my focus goes. It's not a matter of eliminating depression or eliminating my social anxiety. It's a matter of learning how to manage it and manage it in a way that I can still thrive in my life.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a key is managing it. And I think you
Yeah.
hit it right on the head, just managing yourself, managing any type of anxiety, whatever. I
Correct.
love that. So, I mean, today's topic is about being vulnerable and like I
Mm.
said, it's a human thing, right? And the thing
It
is
is.
though, Di, for men, it's such a stigma, I
Yeah.
think,
Mm.
for being vulnerable. Maybe, depending on who you talk to, some people
Mhm.
say, yeah, no, hey, it shows your human side, or it shows your weak side. Anybody that cries is weak and all that. So I've heard it
Mm.
throughout pretty much my life,
Yeah.
whether I held it in, or I came home and a couple of tears shed.
Mm.
um what are some ways that we can eliminate, it's a bad choice of words, but
No, it's okay. I understand what you're saying.
how do we block being vulnerable from others that might, scoff at us, if that makes sense?
No, it does make sense. And the thing about vulnerability is I still feel that it's a skill more than anything. And
Mm,
like any skill, the more we practice it, the better we are at not only doing it but navigating it, in
okay.
our own lives and in other people's lives. And if you think about vulnerability, I mean, most of our relationships to or understanding of that word, it's pretty negative.
Yeah.
Um, and so if that's what our beliefs are attached to, is a negative idea of what that term vulnerability is and how it shows up for us, well, of course we have this sort of negative general consensus that, hey, don't be vulnerable. You'll get taken advantage of. It's a
Mm,
weakness. It means you're lesser of a man. Just amazing. Just the amount of stigmas that are out there, and how quickly people will stand behind those. And I'm like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because if
yeah.
you think about what is vulnerability, it's the ability to open up, to connect with tremendous authenticity, and to really meet people where they're at. But it's also allowing people to see a little bit of us, a little bit of what we're dealing with, whether
To
good,
see the
bad,
real
or
us,
ugly.
right? To see
Yeah.
the, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, no, but no, you're absolutely right though. Like, just think about if anyone's gone on a date with somebody, right? That was vulnerability to get the date.
Right.
Did you have a follow-up date? Yeah. That again, another exercise in vulnerability. I mean, we're putting ourselves out there, especially
Mm,
emotionally, psychologically, some cases physically or spiritually too, right? And we put ourselves out on this edge. And of course, there's fears. There's concerns about, well, if I'm tell too much or I share too much, oh gosh, will they use that against me?
oh my God.
Because it's awful, right?
And I want to, sorry that I cut you off,
Yeah.
because
No,
you
no,
just hit on
please
the
go
head.
ahead. Yeah.
By opening up, right?
Mhm.
I've done a couple of shows where I had a panel of women on, and then I had another
Mm.
show that I had one woman on, and they talked about opening up, things not to
Mm.
say on the first date. Like sometimes
Yeah.
men don't want, I mean, some of the women don't want you to talk about maybe your past or
Mhm.
or any issues that you might have, maybe
Right.
down the road as you go along.
Yeah.
I like what you said is, opening up and owning what you have.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone through a period whether you open up to your buddies or maybe female? I already I could tell what you're gonna say.
Well,
And
how many
and
can I
yeah, go
tell you?
ahead, please. Yeah, please go.
Well, so I did a TEDx talk on this subject last year, and that's where that title actually comes from. Is why vulnerability is a human thing. So it's not a
Right.
man thing. It's not a woman thing. It's not really a gender thing. It's just a human
Okay.
quality.
Right.
And my TEDx talk, I talk specifically about an event that happened 13 years ago,
Mhm.
and I won't go into all the gory details, also for time, but also,
Right.
hey, if people are interested, go watch the TEDx talk.
Yeah. I'll
But
put it on the show notes. Yeah.
oh, thank you, thank you. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. Okay. I didn't know
Mm,
how to open up. I could be vulnerable about anything business related,
mm,
right? Professional wise. But when it came to my personal life, and I look at all the people I associated with, that my closest friends at the time, like I was just emulating what everybody else in my network was doing, specifically the men.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we wouldn't open up on that stuff. We talk about everything else, talk about sports. Hey, let's go play some golf. We'll hang it on the 19th,
Yeah.
we'll share some pictures, let's go watch UFC. Like it was very surface conversation. And the only time it was ever really serious or more on the vulnerable side, and of course everybody felt uncomfortable having the conversation because you don't practice it that much, so it feels weird,
Yeah.
you know, but it would be because someone's in crisis.
Mm,
And I was like, man, do we have to wait till someone's in crisis every time to be able to just get real with somebody?
right.
Like it just seems weird, right? It's like some people that decide to take care of their health after the doctor said, man, if you don't do something, you're gonna die. And then people are like, okay, I better do something about this. But why do we have to wait to the point of crisis to make a change?
Right.
And to be fair, it's just because the conversation's not front of mind, and we might grow up not having certain habits or behaviors modeled to us by the people that we care about or put on a pedestal or esteem, even the mentors, the teachers in our lives, the parents in our life,
Yeah.
the people that influence us in our worldview.
Wow.
And so I realized I was lacking in the faculties and the awareness of how to even start to be vulnerable on a personal level. And as such, I avoided those moments to the point that I was very good at avoiding. And my favorite way to avoid, I'd have some drinks.
Mm,
And sometimes that would lead to doing other things like narcotics, which
right.
also sometimes would lead to me doing things that I'm not proud of, especially when it comes to my relationship with my wife.
Right.
And so 13 years ago, it came to a head where my whole life was literally being challenged in
Yeah.
many ways, professionally, personally, and everything in between. And I made a choice after my wife asked me a question. The
Mm,
question was, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters? I'm a
wow.
father of two girls. And
Right.
when she asked that question, it was like, holy smokes, I am not that man. And if a guy like I'm being right now showed up on my doorstep to want to date or get close to my girls, I would kick him in the ass and tell him to get lost.
Right. Right. Right.
But
Wow.
here's the thing. That's what I was modeling to my kids because our brains aren't wired to be happy. And I'm sorry for anybody that's watching or listening to this. I don't mean to burst your bubble, but your brain's not wired to be happy, but it's wired to learn.
Right.
And the best way that we all learn, and you can challenge me on this, but if you actually go and reflect on how have you learned things in your life, you'll realize that this is true. We learn through modeling and mentorship.
Mm,
That's it. Those are the two most prominent ways that we learn. Modeling is seeing things done and then trying to do those things. Mentorship is also getting that feedback or that guidance, that teaching, that support as we learn to do things or whatever it might be. And as such, when you realize that we can learn things, we can learn new stuff, we can learn to be more vulnerable, but
right.
we need a safe place to practice. We need a safe place to start to learn these skills. But anyways, I realized this 13 years ago when I said, listen, I'm going to give up alcohol for a year so I can work on me.
Right.
I can fix this crap that I've created in my life.
Yeah.
After that year, I remember my wife saying like, hey, so you did the year without alcohol. Wow. Do you want to celebrate with a glass of wine? And I'm like, you know what? I've had so much growth and so many positive changes in my life in the last 12 months. What if I keep going?
Right.
And, it's 13 years later, almost to the day since I had any alcohol, and
Amazing.
I, listen, it wasn't like I felt I was an alcoholic,
Mhm.
even that term, I think there's a lot of stigmas with that. And I'm, the way it's treated like a disease.
Yeah.
I'm not here to talk about that today, but I
Sure.
think there's something there to be challenged.
Right.
Because there's safety in labels, right? Like we like to have a label. We like to give ourselves something and say, this is who I am. This is what I am. But,
Mm.
sometimes the methodologies that support that aren't necessarily the best. But long and short, I just got to work that year,
Yeah.
and I realized I couldn't do it on my own. So I found some people outside of my networks that had those skills, and they helped. They started modeling and mentoring me on how to do those skills myself. And
Right.
everything changed. William, everything changed.
No, I definitely believe it. Like I said, when I read about your biography and we're talking with Dai Manuel, am I pronouncing your last name
Yeah,
right?
you got it right. Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Manuel, like Morales, right? Like
Yeah.
you got it. It's mine's a Portuguese last name. So
Okay, mine's is a Puerto Rican last name.
there you go. Right
Yeah.
on.
So we talked about being out there. I definitely want to know more about your TEDx talks, and like I said, I'll definitely put up on the show notes.
Thanks.
Being in a crisis that to make us change, if that makes sense. If I
Yeah.
write, and we learn by modeling, and I want to talk about that too, the modeling, because when I grew up with my grandfather, and I didn't see my father as much because I grew up with my grandparents, but I did not see. Let me rephrase it. I didn't hear the word love.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, I think I was also in my mid 40s when I had like an epiphany. And, I went to a self-development class. It was like a 3-day thing. And I started learning, and I started like love was just another word like, hey, and what's up? And it's just, yeah, that's what it meant to me. Nothing else.
Right.
But going to these personal development is like you say, you model people, especially the ones that you want to model, the ones that are professional, the ones that are open to teach and to and have you learn from them. It made a change on me little by little, and then I'm like, holy cow, I can say love, and it's not a 4-letter word, a bad 4-letter word. So
Yes.
so for you to talk about that, and I would say that I forget what was the term I used, but I like what you said, safety and a label. When we
Yes.
label ourselves,
Yeah.
it's like, we block ourselves off. Oh yeah, I'm a confirmed bachelor. Oh, you know what? I'm okay being single because I got so much to do, Oh, okay, so he's busy. We talked about that
Yep.
before.
You bet.
So when you decided that you wanted to make that change, you made the change. How did the circle around you change with you, if that was
Well,
possible?
so yeah, here's the thing I like to say all the time, because I know exactly what you're asking there. And that was something that I dealt with initially, because I realized I was trying to support those that were around me in my network, and helping them to maybe open up to these ideas
Yeah.
and concepts and habits and just way of being. And I realized that they weren't having the same desire that I did. They
Ah,
themselves didn't want to change for them, and what you have to realize is that if you can't change the people around you, you just got to change the people around you,
right.
and for
Yeah.
me, I needed to do that. So I got all new association. I started, like Jim Rohn, he's famously quoted, we are the net sum of the 5 closest
People.
relationships,
Yes,
right?
I love that
Yeah.
quote. Yes.
But it's true. And when you really think about it, you think about who drips into our lives most consistently, we tend to model some of their behaviors and habits and
Mm,
thoughts and everything else, right? So if there's certain habits in your life that aren't serving you, that are holding you back, limiting your ability to experience joy, happiness, and fulfillment in your life,
yeah.
then it's probably something that needs some attention. And if you look at all your friends that you're closest to, chances are probably a good chunk of them are also struggling with that.
Yeah.
So look to expand those relationships, those horizons, find new community, because that's the biggest thing I needed to do. I needed to find community to plug into. And
Yeah.
fortunately, me, I discovered Toastmasters, which also helped me deal with anxiety of speaking in public.
Toastmasters. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it's
yes.
it's a nonprofit. They're everywhere. I mean, it's dirt cheap. And I still think they should charge people properly for it, because I think people treat it differently. But that's the beauty of it. It's accessible to all of us, all around the world. And it helps you become a better leader, but also helps you develop powerful communication skills
Yeah.
and strategies. And, I've been part of that community now, gosh, going on almost 14 years. And it's really helped a ton.
Yeah.
And so that was my first sort of inkling into starting to change that association, was getting around a community of people that espoused the values and belief systems
Yeah.
that I wanted to gain. Like that's what you have to identify is what is important to me, what are the values that are most important, what are some of the skills I want to develop, and then saying, okay, who do I currently know that has those?
Yeah.
Or what communities do I believe I could go and be a part of that would also help me develop those? And that's what you do. You just go and you do that. And trust me, you just keep showing up. Like you talked about your personal development weekend that you went to.
Yeah.
Just showing up for those 3 days.
Yeah.
It had a huge impact because you showed up, you were present, like that's what most of the work is just showing up.
Yeah. No, that was huge. I know we're short on time and we're talking with Dai Manuel. Talk about your whole life fitness manifesto challenge. If you want to talk more about that.
Sure. Well, thank you. 7 years ago, I published a book, and the book's called The Whole Life Fitness Manifesto. And I've been in the fitness and wellness industry, helping people with nutrition, mindset conditioning, but also fitness, developing a fitness. And, I've been doing that 28 years. So a long time. And I've seen it all. Right. Okay? I've heard every objection or excuse possible for why people can't prioritize their health. And I guess it was about 9 years ago, during part of that change of finding a new association, my wife and I also said, okay, there's some groups that we just can't find the values that we want. Right. Why don't we create our own? And so we did that. We created a community of people that got together every Sunday morning to do group workouts together, group activities. Right. And so it was a health focused group. And it became my testing grounds for a lot of theories that I had and ideas I had on how to support people with change, especially change when it involves health change. Right. That's really hard for a lot of us, is making those health changes. And so we created this community, and it was beautiful what we learned over those couple of years. And literally we would get about, at the peak, 100 people every Sunday coming through doing sessions with us. Wow. And it was all free. Yeah. It didn't charge a thing, because I wanted to make it accessible to everybody. Right. And I know dollars and cents always get in the way as one of the biggest excuses that prevents us. Yeah. So I was like, well, I'm going to get rid of that one. And long and short of it, that's where the book came from, was what I was able to test and retest and prove as far as what would be the simplest way to help people where they're at, no matter where they're at, and see significant results within 28 days. Right. And so that's what I created. Was it literally a program that is plug and play, no equipment required. If you got enough room to put down a towel on your floor, you got enough room to do the workouts. It also helps reinforce mindful meditation and personal development. So that's the idea. 30 minutes a day, 2% of every 24 hours, 15 minutes of movement, 5 minutes of mindful meditation, 10 minutes of personal development, 2% that becomes a non-negotiable for 28 days. And if you do that, right, watch out. That's all I can say is just watch out. Like, just prove me wrong that it doesn't work. That's what I keep telling everybody. I'm like, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. It's okay. I'll eat a hat. No problem. No one's proven me wrong yet, and because it works. Now, people will often say, is that all I got to do? And I'm like, no, but it's the least that you're worth. Right. You're valuable. You have tremendous value to offer. And if we can get more out of your health, think about how much more you can offer to the world. Yeah. I love that. And that's what I'm trying to do, just help people tap into that potential that I see in them that sometimes they can't see in themselves, Yeah.
No, that's perfect. I mean, you can't, you can't ask for anything more, but just, doing the program, and you're bettering yourself just as much. Like one of my affirmations during the day is, I'm going to exercise and eat correctly. I'm an older man. I like walking. I like doing a little running. I roller skate on the weekends for some of my friends that I know. So I try to keep myself active. But anyway, Dai, first of all, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. Is there anything I could have asked that I didn't? And second question, is there anything else you want to promote? Course or anything?
That's my thing. I don't go on, I don't have these conversations to promote anything, which is, I know it's kind of weird, and my past business coaches would probably slap me on the wrist, but I'm, just being here, I want to offer value. That's my life mission, is to support people. And just in having this conversation with you, and I hope one person listens to this, just one, and they walk away feeling empowered to make some changes. Yeah, no, fair enough. And also realize that they're not alone. Like there's so many of us out there. And that's the thing about vulnerability. As soon as you start opening up and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, isn't it wild when people around us all of a sudden also put up their hands and say, oh, me too. But if we're not opening up and sharing what we're working through, we don't give others the opportunity to also share.
Right. Don't be ashamed to ask for help.
No, it's like the biggest thing. It's changed my life. Now, I wish I came to it sooner in life, but you know what? When's the best time to come to it? Either today or 20 years ago, but like a tree, right? When's the best time to plant it? Well, 20 years ago or today. Like,
Right.
same idea. When's the best day to develop vulnerability? Well, obviously when we were very young, but if not, right now. Like
Today.
it's but other than that, it's been just a wonderful conversation, and thank
Yeah,
you
I had a great
so
time.
much
No,
for
my
creating
pleasure.
this.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah.
And if somebody want to get in contact with you, Dai, what's the best way?
The fortunate thing about having a unique name, I'm pretty easy to find if you spell it the right way. So Dai is a Welsh name for David. It's
Okay.
D-A-I. Manuel, Portuguese, Manuel. And everyone's like, well, what are you? And I'm like, I'm Canadian. Don't worry about it. Like, don't worry about it. But I'm active on LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as Instagram. So if you want to connect with me on social, connect there. And then other than that, just go to my website, shoot me a note, and I'm always happy to have a conversation. I love it. And
Yeah, no,
my website, it's got lots of info. Like, just
yeah,
have
I'll
fun.
definitely put it on the show notes and all that.
Thanks.
Anyway,
Thank
but
you.
again, Dai, thank you so much for being on People on Dating.
Thank
I
you.
really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been amazing, and I look forward to us catching up again soon.
No, we will. We'll definitely do a follow-up. Thank you. Take care. Well, everyone, that was Dai Manuel, and you can find him at daimanuel.com. That's DAIMANUEL.com. Dai, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. Much appreciated. You can find me at peopleondating.com. That's peopleondating.com. Also, I'm on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Please go to Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe, leave a review, tell us how we can make this show better, and share. Also, on peopleondating.com, you can find past shows there, my blog, and I'm starting a resource page. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening on People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales, and just remember, this is just a conversation, no judgment. Thanks. Until next time, and please, please stay healthy.